Bonjour, everybody. I had a chance to sit with a South African woman who developed a unique career for first accepting the challenge of promoting the image of a nation. Today, we shine a spotlight on Tebogo Lefifi, China's chief representative for Brand South Africa. It starts now. Hello, Tebogo.
Hi, Lady Sasha, how are you?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Beautiful day in Beijing.
It is. It is quite hot though.
Yeah, well, I'm African. There's no such thing as too hot.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. You're African and you coming from a beautiful country called South Africa.
Yes, I'm very lucky to be South African. Beautiful, beautiful country. It's an absolute must visit.
Yes, I know. That's on my list actually. I'm waiting for that invitation. But before that, I would like to know how long you're in China and why you've decided to live in China.
I've been in China for now. This is my ninth year, and initially I actually thought I'd come here and stick around for 15 years.
Oh
I
wow.
still hope, yeah, but I feel like I'm a little bit at a point where I need a bit of a hiatus and be back in the continent. There's a lot of things happening in Africa at the moment that I want to be part of. But
Mm-hmm.
the reason I came to China was I took a perspective when I was living in the UK for a brief, and I looked at China's growing influence globally and how it affected international business. I
Mm-hmm.
looked at strategies that people were employing to enter China, and there were not enough people that knew what was going on in China. You met a whole bunch of people that would consider themselves China experts, and
Yeah.
yeah, some of them like a few big guys that I was trying to hire for a job that I was doing in the UK because we're looking to enter the China market.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to get a sense that they didn't know about China as they made it out to sound, and you've seen this where somebody comes to China 3, 4 times a year and they want to consider themselves a China expert. And then I decided I'd rather not listen to the experts, and I hired a few young people, young Chinese graduates, super smart young Chinese graduates, to intern in my office in London. And from
Mm.
that perspective, I got a different sense of what China's about because they basically had indigenous information about China. And at that moment, I wanted to specialize in international business advisory services. And I thought if I come to China, I'll understand a lot more about China than these consultants running all over the world.
All right.
And
So
I
you
thought,
were already a high professional in the UK, but to learn that business in China, how did you do? Did you directly work in China or you study? What did you do when you first came?
when I first came, I actually just came. I just decided I was in Hong Kong for a holiday. I loved Hong Kong. It was the first time in Asia, and I traveled a lot in Europe and US. Not enough in Africa. It can never be. And I thought, from Hong Kong perspective, China was getting closer to um, the Olympics, and everybody was watching the speed that China was developing and getting ready for the Olympics. And I thought, oh my God, this is exciting. But Hong Kong felt like a normal New York or city in Europe. And I
Yes.
thought, I want to do mainland. So I came in, I quit my job in London. I came into China. I came by myself, and I thought, okay, I'm going to live in Beijing, where basically it's like the center of Beijing. And I lived in the Hutongs, and the first thing I thought was that I gotta get a bicycle, and that was basically from like the 99 million bicycles in Beijing. Like I'm really going to immerse myself into the China thing, understand how Chinese people think about business, how they want to engage with the world, and just understand the landscape. So I came in and I started with a short language program. I haven't made
Mm.
that much progress in the 9 years that I've been here. I just about speak uh,
Oh,
taxi
I'm
Chinese.
pretty sure you're speaking survival Chinese. That's all you need there.
Yeah, actually, I often say I don't speak Chinese, but I speak China. So
Exactly.
that's good enough for me, you know. I might not speak the language, but there are a lot of nuances that I feel a little bit more comfortable now. And so my plan was just in the first few months, actually the first few years, it was I'm going to be here for 15 years. Or I'll basically have an intense engagement with China for the next 15 years. And my plan was the first 5 years, I just needed to learn, just observe, not really try to come to any conclusions, not try to position myself as a China expert. And it literally, I'd basically stand at the corner of the street and watch, the day move by, watch how construction guys operate, watch how business works, and quite an interesting, just, observing and observing. And it's just a lot of observing. That's what I did in the first 5 years. And the second 5 years, if I'm still in it, it's basically practicing what I know. And I think over time, realizing that I've got a bit of authority in some of the opinions that I have about China or my observations about China. And I also didn't want to take any academic programs in that first 5 years because I thought I don't want a textbook lesson of what China's about. I want to see it. I want to engage with people. I want to, well, I've practiced a little bit because I worked with a few think tanks from overseas that were looking at China, but I didn't want to take the academic route on learning about doing business in China. I
This
felt
is
like I'd done that in my past life.
Yeah, this is great, but I wanted to know also, do you have a different feelings about like the first 5 years here in China and the next years, even though you still on the 9 year being here? Like, what's your feeling? Are you feeling more positive, more like how you feel right now?
Okay, I think there's actually a saying that a quotation that when you're in China for the first 3 days, you can actually write a book, and after a few weeks, you can write an article, and after 1 year, you can write a paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
But after like 3 years, you can hardly say a word about anything about China because everything becomes so normal. It becomes a part of who you are. And you sometimes you self-criticize, sometimes you kind of pat yourself on the back and thinking, "Wow, I'm doing great." So it has now become part of my new DNA of some things are still or some things still impress me about how China does business. I'm learning every day. That's one thing that hasn't changed about China for me. Is that from the minute I came, every single day I'm learning something new, something productive, something that I can use in my business. So I am positive. I have more confidence. I've come to understand China. I've come to understand its challenges. I mean, I'm now less inclined to want to correct anything that I come across and just let it be. So it's also like in my own personal growth, where as you grow older, you get a lot more wisdom about how to handle challenges.
Let's talk about your market because you're saying that China is not a niche market no more, but you have your own market. You a really creative brand manager. You're doing branding as the China chief representative for the brand South Africa. Do you remember the first time you thought or heard about national branding? Like, what got you interested about that?
Actually, I heard about nation branding when I lived in London. I was doing my thesis for my MBA at the time, which is 10 years ago. And I read about a guy called Simon Arnold. He basically sort of fashioned the whole nation branding. But his view was that nation branding was public diplomacy. And I thought it's a lot more than that. And I also did not like his views about Africa. He's got quite damaging views about Africa as far as nation branding. But I also prior to that, I was writing my thesis about information anomaly in terms of country of origin, because a lot of products that come from Africa, they've got the marketing negative, like a brand attack that, oh, it comes from Africa, so it cannot be good enough. And that includes its people. It's not just products that you're trying to market overseas that would have, the country of origin damaging the actual content of the product. So I was looking at a thesis of how do we align, the country of origin? How do we narrow the distance between African products and the Western markets in terms of the negativity or the negative perception they have about our products? And how do we, because it's all about information. It's all about asymmetry. If information is not aligned with the end user, or they're not getting enough information, or they've got misperception, that's how you end up with a negative brand. So I remember I wrote my thesis on that a long time ago, and it just didn't sound. And I thought China would be a more interesting market because it's very different from the UK, where uh, there's a lot more investment in the West about the negative narrative on Africa
Yeah.
than the Chinese. The Chinese have imported this negative perception, but they're not invested in it. They don't feel like there's a lot more for China to gain by seeing Africa as a lower partner or as an not advanced economy. China wants to negotiate with advanced economies, so for them they don't have that investment. So I thought, okay, I want to test the nation branding in China. And so it was 10 years ago that I heard about it. And I then subsequently I started my own company on China Africa Advisory, which I still have now, but it's been a little bit dormant since I joined Brands Africa. And I thought I realized every time I walk in China and everything that I do, every interview, anything that I do that's visible, I'm basically literally Africa at work. I'm a manifestation of what people will see as Africa. And that's the only way China got to see Africa, with Africans in China.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the No Name Podcast, or NNP. We value our platform and are working to bring you the best show possible. Now you can help make that happen. If you like what you've heard or have an idea to make it better, feel free to follow us on Wechat, Twitter, and Instagram at bizunsasha, BIZUNSASHA, and tell us what you think. Or you can send us an email at nonamepodcast123@gmail.com. NNP, many voices, one sound. Peace.
How would you describe the South African brand, and do you identify any gap between like the perception of the Chinese and the international audience when it comes to South Africa?
I think, South Africa as a brand, we're an advanced economy that is open to do business. We basically have a stable economy, stable politics. So we've got beautiful people, which was proven during the World Cup.
Yeah,
The beautiful thing about that, when I say we've got beautiful, like welcoming people, that's not even South Africa's own opinion. It's how other people feel about us as an economy. We do very well at the World Economic Forum indexes. We track about 10 indexes that tell us how we're doing. And the global reputation of South Africa is basically shaped by perceptions of investment, immigration policies, environment, exports, people, culture, our heritage, governance, and tourism. And I think at the moment, South Africa is very visible in the global platform. And I think we can actually say globally we're a recognized developing nation in Africa. But for China, it's very special. We've got a deeper relationship with China because we've got a comprehensive strategic relationship with China. We are part of the BRICS club, which is from invitation from Chinese government, actually, that we got to be part of that. We're also now co-chairing the China-Africa forum. So for China at the moment, we're a very strategic partner. But that's almost at high level and almost medium level with state-owned enterprises. At the people-to-people level, there are huge gaps, versus what the Europeans know, because we've got cities like Cape Town, we've got South African wine all over the world, we've got South African diamonds that everybody knows. But in the lower market in China, our brand is still we're new at communicating our brand. And
Oh, really?
as an investment destination. Yeah, because I opened the office 3 years ago, the Brands Africa office. So we didn't focus directly on the Chinese market. And we've only started basically telling our story in China, in the Chinese language, in the last 3 years when I started this office.
South Africa, yes, is pretty big in China. Like we knew that 2014 was like it was South Africa and China. It was big year. 2015 it was China in South Africa with the FOCAC. But except that government side, in your view, which is the best way to perform like the country image measurement? Like how do you know that that brand's doing well, except the government side?
Well, that's what I said. We follow indices on. We've got the World Economic Forum index. We actually also use the Simon Arnold index. So it looks at, they measure perception of how China is doing in, how South Africa is doing in China. So actually, it's a global indices that we look at. So that's one way we look at it. On a weekly basis, we also do a lot of media monitoring, where we look at the top stories about South Africa specifically in traditional Chinese media and online media. So week on week, we measure in the pulse. We're keeping, and that's what this office does. We keep a pulse on how is South Africa perceived. And whenever there's negative news in about South Africa, that sometimes when a Chinese person has a negative experience in South Africa and it makes the news, it tends to bring back a lot of content of old news that was negative. So we basically try to give a balanced perception. So we make sure that we've got enough content in the market for media. We basically build relationship with Chinese media so that they can always have access to content. If they've got questions about South Africa, we make ourselves available. We give them access to opinion makers in South Africa. We engage with strategic business people in China, like the CCPIT, the China Investment Promotion Agency, because they influence where investment goes. There is a huge trend now, China Africa nations to invest in Africa. And the Chinese don't know anything about Africa. They're very scared to go to embassies, or they might find that because of the language barrier, they can't approach any business people in South Africa. So, or they don't know where to start from a research point of view. So we've become very accessible in terms of pointing people in the right direction, making sure that we harvest or we access information that's in Chinese that we can pass on to Chinese investors if they need access to investments. So we host a lot of roundtables throughout China to engage with Chinese businesses and give them information about investment opportunities in South Africa. We also work with one of the things that we do really well is a program called Global South Africans, where we engage South Africans abroad to be able to tell the same narrative that we have as a country, that we're open for business, we've got high education, we've got a good quality of life. So I work a lot with South African students because they tend to interact a lot with the men on the street or with students that we're trying to attract to come work. Your specialist high skill experts that we're trying to South Africa. We give South African students material during cultural festivals. We make sure that they've got booklets on investing in South Africa or living in South Africa, that they've got branding, that we've got a very cohesive brand now. We've got a logo that's easily recognizable that we use across all South African departments. Whenever we're in China, we go out as Team South Africa. When we attend high-level meetings, we're there as Team South Africa. We've got the same narrative. We understand what's going on globally. And that's part of Brand South Africa's work, to make sure that the global South Africans are they know what's going on in the country. They know how, if there's a crisis, they know how are we dealing with that crisis in the country.
I would like to come back to you as a person, as a mentor, because you've been mentoring a lot of people here. I feel like you also, myself included, like I see you as a model. You, a woman around all those people, those investors, those strategic people, and it's pretty like it's a manly environment. How did you succeed to impose yourself as a woman there?
Well, one of the things, actually, I had a few women's events earlier in March. And the question that keeps coming is the same thing that you're asking. As a woman, how do you succeed? How do you fight? And, which I also said earlier, as you grow, you have a little bit more wisdom. You know, you're not the smartest, but you're a little smarter than somebody else because you're growing, you've gone through the experience. And China it's pretty much a man's world also. It's a very patriarchal society. And you get ignored in meetings, you know, you get treated like a second-class citizen as a woman. And in my 20s, my urge was to always fight back and scream back and say, you know, I've earned my place. But now I realize my CV speaks for itself. My work will speak for itself. You know, you don't need to prove anything. Let the men run and shine and be in front, and your work will soon speak for itself. And people respect integrity. People respect good quality, and you are going to have to work twice as hard than the men do to actually outshine them, and not just to bully your way into a position. And if you get into battles of being ignored as a, trying to shout louder as a woman in the room, you end up fighting useless battles. You'll end up fighting the fights that you're not supposed to be fighting. You'll expand your energy in unnecessary directions. So I think I've had people, it's almost like when you're a woman, people have a second take. They'll see you, they'll talk to you, they'll disregard what you're saying. But I've had the patience to know that they'll always come back, because at some point they realize you have the information and the knowledge and the expertise to do the job better than two men to put together. So it's an issue of patience, of just saying, you watch and you build relationships with people that believe in you, and those become your spokesperson. And not to say that all men were better than all men. There's an equilibrium, and there are men that actually, I am who I am as a strong woman because of the men in my life, because of the smart men in my life. I don't have sisters, I don't have aunts. So my most influence growing up was with my brothers and my uncles, who basically made me believe that as a woman I'm worth something, and I should only surround myself with men who respect me. And it's also, as a woman, learning to identify the men that make you a better woman. The men that respect you, that do not think that you need to be less of a woman for them to be men. And real men would support you in that way. I've worked with men in Beijing quite a lot. I've learned to identify the men that want to take me to a higher place. I've worked with men that wanted to mentor me. I've had white Afrikaner men in Beijing that it will be an anomaly in South Africa to be supported by that category of men, who would come to me and ask me, are you okay in China? Do you have business? Should you make sure that you've got a pipeline of consulting work? They constantly check on me and making sure that as a South African, I'm thriving in China. And it's just being smart to sort of say, you know what, judge people by who they are, identify the 5 or so people that will mentor you and enrich your life, and, take it to the next level. And not every agenda is about women empowerment. Sometimes it is about you and the content of your work, and you got to show up and do better. Simple, So I think as a woman, you're gonna have to work twice as hard. You're gonna have to excel. You're gonna have to be above average all the time, and that's what we constantly. That when I mentor people, I tell them that sometimes you don't need to fight the gender parity issue. You need to put what you're doing first. You will excel and you will prove. Show up and own your work.
You're listening to another episode of the No Name Podcast, or NNP. NNP is a show that aims to bring the world's Black diaspora to the forefront and highlights their unique lifestyles while connecting their common cultures. The perspectives of the diaspora are valuable, and no one can tell our stories better than us. So thanks for hearing ours. We appreciate your support and encourage you to share. NNP, many voices, one sound. Peace.
Personally, what's your success tip you can share with the young people? Can be men and women, but young people. The success tip to be a good brand manager.
Well, I think nation branding is also a little bit different from branding a product. But one of the things, it's easy with my brand, because I love my brand, I love my job, I love South Africa. So the brand is who I am. But I would say one thing, one of the things that I would like to do next is actually a brand Africa in China, go bigger, go on a continental basis. But as an African, it is who I am. It is my identity. Brand Africa is my identity. But it's also, I've invested a lot in reading about the country. So it's not on a superficial level. As I said, we track indices. We read the news about what's going on. We look at perception. And it's also branding and brand, they're a little bit different, because as a brand is what people say about you behind your back, and you better make sure it's good. But branding is all the exercises you do, all the activation you do to improve your brand. So your brand and your branding exercise, you have to make sure that they're aligned, and you're also correcting the misperceptions that are in the market. You must have integrity in what you're doing, and don't be a denialist. When we have problems in South Africa, People will often want to say, oh, but you've got that problem and that problem. But the market and investors and people that will invest in you they're human. The system is human. They will acknowledge that you have problems. You are judged on how you solve and resolve your problems, not on the problems that you as a brand. So it's how quickly you basically resolve the problem. I mean, you've seen recently the advert with the soap advert
Yeah, the
with
detergent ad in China. Yeah.
detergent advert. Yeah, I mean, it brought up a whole lot of discussions. But I think more than anything, people are looking at how is the company going to look at the situation? How is it going to resolve the perception that this advert is this way and that way? And that was actually the disappointing part, that the nonchalant response of the senior management, more than anything, that they actually embarrassed their own Chinese people. So more than it's how you respond to a crisis, that you cannot eliminate crisis, you cannot eliminate brand attack, but it's how you actually engage with your target market that you'll be judged on. That you must have a very genuine response to situation. You must show that you're actually making great effort to resolve challenges. We all fail, but we fail forward. We don't sit and not try because there's a challenge. So I'd say if you're in branding, you should never be scared to make mistakes. You should try and make mistakes. If you're in branding, I would say start new things, inspire new things. And I would say our payoff line in South Africa is inspiring new ways, because as a young country, I think we've inspired a lot of other emerging markets on global integration, technology advances, on democracy. So, and I also personally, I love doing new things. I love moving into a new house. I love moving to new countries. I love trying out new things. So that constantly inspires me, because I think from branding, that's what people are looking for. They're looking for something fresh. They're looking for something new, but they're looking for honesty also. So integrity in your brand, I would say that's a big element.
You actually you're doing national branding, but I'm pretty sure that you will be good also doing like company branding and even personal branding. I say that because you actually, like, everybody knows you here, but because we can see you. We can see you because you have always different high glasses. I never saw you with like the same glasses. Like, this is crazy. I just wanted to know how many pair of eyeglasses you have at home. Like, this is insane. But this is you. This is your style, so people can recognize you directly. You did your own personal branding, right?
I didn't deliberately do that's why I say I love new things. I love different things. And actually, sometimes people say, oh, you like being different. I'm like, actually, I think everybody else likes being the same. People make more effort being the same than being themselves. And the minute you be yourself, you actually will be different, because we are all different. And one of the things, I wear glasses and I've tried to wear contacts. It doesn't work. And I've thought, why don't I change my glasses every day when I can change my shoes every day? This is the face that people see. This is your interaction with people. It's like your face. They don't care about your shoes. They don't care about the different clothes you wear all the time. So I like glasses. I like crazy glasses. I see them and I go crazy. When I go all over the world, I look for glasses. In the last 9 years in China, because China makes it so cheap and so easy, I'll probably have gone through 500 pairs, and
Oh
now
my
at home I've
gosh.
got about 150 pairs.
What?
In China, I've got about 150 pairs. Whenever I travel, I've got 10 pairs of glasses with me, because I think every moment needs a different pair. And it's just weird. It's like they're part of my outfit. Like in the morning when I get dressed, my glasses are part of the decision making process.
But you look
What
good
am
with
I?
your glasses. I really like it. Just the last question to finish. What's your happy moments at work, one in terms of branding South Africa? What you consider to be a happy moment?
I think every time I've gone out and spoken with people about South Africa, and when you're in an audience and you're talking about what we have to offer as a country, and everybody's nodding their heads, because I think that's about me. I speak very fast, so constantly going out and slowing down and delivering a message and having a sense of your message was delivered, and
Mm-hmm.
people have a new perception of South Africa. And there's follow-up questions about investing in South Africa. Those are my favorite moments.
That is great. Thank you again, Tebogo Lefifi, for this for your time today. And
Sasha?
yes, if people want to contact you, do you have any contact info?
I think the best way to get hold of me is on WeChat, and my WeChat name is Fenkong, which is FENGKONG 8. So it's Fenkong with the number 8 at the end.
Okay. This is a
And
Skype contact.
that's my direct contact, and we're also online. My details are available on the Brand South Africa website, which is brandsouthafrica.com.
All right, brandsouthafrica.com. Okay. Thank you again, Tebogo.
Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
I really enjoy it.
Can invite you to our own podcast soon.
Oh, yeah. I want to be there. I want to be there. We should be there. Thank you
Awesome.
again.
All right, see you soon.